This is the Chewing the Cud podcast, a podcast for the UK dairy industry, brought to you from the southwest of England and listened to around the world. Hello and welcome to Chewing the Cud podcast. My name's Andrew Jones and with me today is...
Sarah Bolt.
How you doing, Sarah?
I'm really good, thank you. And you, Andrew?
Yeah, not too bad. I've seen you twice since the last podcast, haven't I?
We've been busy people out and about.
Oh, yeah. I saw you at Dairy Tech. How was Dairy Tech for you?
It was absolutely fabulous. We were sponsoring the Down to Earth Hub and it was really good. Really nice to get Kings Hayes' name out there a little bit more. And yeah, had some great conversations during the day.
How was it stood in front of all of those people?
I was doing a talk on the Innovation Hub, actually, and I was talking about slurry additives.
Yep.
So yes, good turnout for that. So hoping that I imparted some useful knowledge.
I've got to be honest, I always find those a struggle because I try and listen to a few of those things. Maybe it's just me, but I just find the background noise is too much that you can't hear people. And I guess they don't want to make it too loud because then it dominates what's going on. So I guess it is a fine balance. But as long as it went well for you. And then I also saw you this week at the MGA. I should give a shout out to Lucy from Silo Stop because she rang me up last minute and said, oh, one of our team can't make it. Would you like a ticket? And I couldn't make the first day, a visit to the Southwest Dairy Development Centre. But obviously having been up there, you know, I've seen it before, but managed the second day, which was really good. It was some interesting speakers, weren't there?
It was really good. Again, we were sponsoring one of the small sponsors of the event, and I was lucky enough to get to go to both days. So not only was it the Southwest Dairy Development Centre, but we also went and stood under the pyramid stage.
Yeah, I know. That's a story I like to tell people. I've stood on the pyramid stage and they look at you and go, what? And it's like, oh, yeah, Gold Cup Day many years ago.
Yeah.
But, it's a good story, that one, isn't it?
It is a good story. So, yeah, obviously had to do the inevitable photos and share those around, as you do.
But anyway, we mentioned the Southwest Dairy Development Centre. This is the last of the 3 follow-ups that I did with Neil from our initial visit at the Southwest Dairy Development Centre. So today we are talking about HerdVision. This podcast has been brought to you today by Chewing the Cud Limited, who offer independent advice for dairy and beef nutrition, cow signals advice and training, along with ROMS mobility scoring. For more details on these and other services available, please visit our website www.chewingthecud.com or email us direct on nutrition@chewingthecud.com. Hello and welcome to Chewing the Cud podcast, a podcast for the UK dairy industry. Farmer, advisor, processor and everyone else, we have topics and episodes that will interest you. We discuss the practical and the technical aspects of different UK dairy industry topics. We aim to make you think about what you're doing and ask yourself, can it be done differently? Listen to us speak with specialists from inside and outside the industry about their area of expertise. Subscribe and listen to episodes for free on your favourite podcast platform or sign up on our website www.chewingthecud.com for podcast notifications so you never miss an episode and links to our socials, including our Instagram, Chewing the Cud Podcast. All one word and remember no G. Or email us direct on podcast@chewingthecud.com. If you like what we do, please share and leave us a review to show your support. And that's it. Enjoy today's episode. So hello, and again, welcome to Chewing the Cud. Today, again, we are following up from our visit from the Southwest Dairy Development Centre. This time, our guest is Gabby Emery from HerdVision. Hello, Gabby.
Morning.
Welcome.
Morning. Thank you for having me.
Morning. Well, it's afternoon as we're recording this,
yes.
Gabby.
But we don't know. Depends when you listen to it, then, doesn't it?
Well, exactly. We're covering all the bases, aren't we?
Yeah.
We're covering all the bases, so not to worry. Yeah. So I forget, sorry, Gabby, what's your role with HerdVision?
So I work within the customer support team. So,
you work customer?
Yeah, I'm working with our existing customer base up and down the country. I largely cover the south.
That's right, good. Cool. So I forgot that bit, so apologies for that. But Gabby, so today we're talking to Gabby with HerdVision. As we say, this is a follow-up from when we visited here. I thought we'd go in a bit more. I've seen some of your colleagues since, because I know James from prior, I know Andy from prior, I know David from prior. And we spoke about different things, and you unfortunately got picked for the job for today. So thank you for joining us.
Name thrown in the hat.
Closest to the centre.
But as usual, who are you? How did you get to where you are today?
So I'm a farmer's daughter from the Mendips, not very far from where we are now, actually. So we farm just over on the edge of Shepton Mallet, and we are a calf rearing unit at home. So it's an AFU, all TB restricted calves, and we produce over 2 separate farms, approximately 4,500 head of calves a year.
Little bit to keep you busy then.
Yeah. To be honest, I do sort of minimal at home these days.
I was going to say, how do you have time to do that and this?
Bit of a weekend job, to be honest. It's one of those, get dragged in, get a phone call to say that he's got 250 calves to vaccinate. But we actually came from the pig industry, so back late 80s, my mum and dad went into outdoor pigs on the very top of Cheddar Gorge. So hard work, a bit like farming in the Somme, I think was the way.
That must have been lovely.
They farmed outdoor pigs there for many, many years. Moved to indoor weaners sort of just post foot and mouth, and then that was only ever sort of managed farms, so never owned. And mum and dad very much had a vision that they wanted to buy something of their own and build it sort of really from the ground up, I suppose. So the opportunity came up in 2007 when I think neither mum or dad were even 40 at the time, but they bought 100 acres over where we are now. With a lot of help from the bank, and essentially, greenfield site, and built what we have now, which, like I say, it's a very efficient system, and it's my dad, my brother, and my dad's partner's daughter that works at home. It's to be honest, that's where my love of agriculture was born, because I was not really I was a farmer's daughter, absolutely, but not sort of a farm child. Like I wasn't one of those that grew up driving the tractor. Those ones that you see on farm. The trouble was obsessed with ponies. Pony club child, that was me. But I mean, to be honest, we used to sort of drag the pony out the back of a cattle trailer at the show, that sort of thing. It was always very rough and ready. But that was always my love affair. But sadly, my mum passed away back in 2015. She was very much 50% of the workforce with my dad. So just mum and dad, they were farming at the time 800 head of calves and about 3,000 head of indoor weaners. Still had some pigs on rented farms. So it was a real blow. She was ill for a couple of years, but still one of those that dad essentially looked at my brother and I and said, look, we can either keep going or we can, sell up and force you kids into it, which was really the beauty of it, to be honest, because that meant that we both had the option. And my brother was actually away. He was in agriculture, had been to college and was milking on a farm, and actually came back. And I had just come out of college doing equine. Definitely thought I was going to make my millions out of horses. Completely impossible.
Easily done.
For anyone wondering.
Well, I was going to say, you and every horsey girl I've ever met at college.
Exactly.
And it is easy.
So came out of there and just came home to support the family unit, really. And like I say, that was the great thing, was that I all of a sudden discovered this passion for it, which I hadn't been forced into, which was a real highlight for me, because I think that a lot of farm children probably feel that pressure to go into the family business. Now, admittedly, I was only there full time for about 18 months because my dad and I are just too similar. You know what these family units go like. So and then on from there, really, the last kind of 10 years has been a bit of a just gone by in a flash. I was working for a beef supply chain for many years, and sort of working within retail and food service. customers. So that was kind of my main, and then moved through a couple of positions before I came to HerdVision. So that was only earlier this year, actually.
So you've not been with them too long then?
No, but largely my sort of professional career has taken me into the dairy side more over than beef. So it's a nice balance, to be honest, because we've got the beef side at home, but then I've also got, that sort of dairy knowledge and interest. Yeah, and it's one of those that I always say, I'm always sort of very honest with farmers. I'm not a dairy farmer, and I think that's something that I always say, that farmers are the best at seeing straight through people. I'm not somebody to ever turn up and tell someone how to manage their cows, but to be able to assist and, provide any sort of value within whatever I'm doing, that's kind of where my, what real passion comes from. So,
Actually, I understand where you're coming from, because on a farm, they already know how to dairy farm.
Exactly.
Now what you've got to give them is the herd wise or whatever you can actually give them that helps them.
Absolutely.
It's almost a better combination.
Definitely. I like to think so.
I've always said that, actually.
But so then HerdVision, tell us a little bit about the history of HerdVision.
Yeah, okay. So back in 2016, I think it was, HerdVision at the time was literally just a proof of concept. Matt Dobbs, who is our CEO, very well known within industry, actually worked with the University of West England, their robotics lab, Bristol Robotics Lab, to sort of develop this proof of concept project. And that was really to prove that they could isolate mobility and body condition score factors around the movement of a cow's back from a bird's eye view. So they worked on that for a couple of years and essentially, published that paper, I believe. And from there, it was sort of I suppose, they kind of came to the end and looked at it that this really needed a commercial partner to develop, from where it was, to take it into industry. And that was where AgSense came from. I always say I work for HerdVision, but the company is actually called AgSense. The product is HerdVision.
I was going to say, whenever you look you guys up or email you, it's always AgSense. It's like, okay, what's the difference? So, you can tell us now, can't you?
Yeah, absolutely. So AgSense is an agri-tech company. So HerdVision is one of those products. Now, it's the most well-known of the product package, particularly within dairy. But we have a number of other projects and products within industry across the different sectors. So really that's the kind of the differential. But AgSense came in 2019 around that time and started sort of taking it through a commercial journey to kind of get it to point of
from proof of concept to commercial reality available to be usable on farm.
Absolutely. So I believe that those 3 years were probably savage hard work. I think there's probably a lot that went into that time, because it's one of those that I always think that which comes out of academia is amazing, it's fantastic, and it means that we can develop what we're doing within industry, but it takes a long while to get some of that stuff sort of through to
exactly from I guess from other people we've spoken to today, from being able to make it happen in a lab and make it happen on a commercial farm are two completely different things.
Very different beasts, absolutely. So
many more variables that are uncontrolled.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And as you say, it's that sort of uncontrollable scenario. So then 2022, the product was commercialised.
Right.
So it was around this time, I believe, so sort of 2.5 years ago, that Arla came into the conversation. So product was fairly sort of solid, ready to go. Had it on a couple of farms, and Arla sort of trial pre-Arla, and then Arla came into the conversation and said that they were interested, heard about it, and were interested in looking at this to really sort of focus on the mobility side, I believe, but wanted to understand how they could employ such tech to benefit their producer pool. So that was then put on 10 trial, if you like, Arla farms, existing Arla farms.
In the UK? Or?
Yeah, in the UK. And from there, they endorsed it. So they essentially gave it the big tick to say, rather than needing a mobility score, mobility score, that they would accept it.
Because I should say this, but I hadn't realised that it was the mobility score. I thought HerdVision, it was only when I was looking at the website the other day prior to this, that it was like, it mobility scores as well. In my head, all I knew HerdVision for was for condition scoring, and that's when you talk to people, that's for example, when I've spoken to some of your colleagues in the past, all that's usually talked about is the condition scoring side of it. I didn't realise the mobility. So you're saying Arla have said that that's okay for mobility scoring as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Neil, we need to have a word with these people. They're putting us out of potential work. Because we're both ROMS accredited and both mobility score for clients.
Yeah, both understand the importance of it.
Yes, exactly. But it's like, wait, stop it.
and that is a big part of what we do, is the fact that we work with ROMs. So whilst it seems that it sort of appears a direct competitor, and as you've highlighted, you think that it's going to go and push people out of work, but actually, I suppose we've got 7,500 dairy farmers in the UK.
Okay,
We've very much, we're sort of in early days. It's only 2022 that we got rolled out. We're not going to take over the world tomorrow. We'd love to think that we're going to, but actually it's really important that we're having those conversations on farm with ROM scorers, looking at that data and understanding, because a lot of people that we speak to sort of entertain the idea of continuing with ROM scoring, whether it be sort of annually alongside HerdVision, and that's completely, it's totally up to each producer what they want to do.
It's in some milk contracts, so you can't get away from it.
Exactly.
I was going to say though, if it's like most things, it will be that's what's said now, but give it 1 or 2 years and you know that it is doing what it's supposed to do, the likelihood of seeing that ROM scorer turn up is just going to diminish. And I'm not trying to take away from what you're doing at all, but I'm just that's what will happen, I'm sure.
And if it's done more accurately and more correctly and easier, well then, and
it's going to be, let's be blunt about it. I jokingly say it's going to be more objective than you're us.
Will be.
It is going to be more objective.
And more acceptable by the milk buyers and people in the industry.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think for me, as I say, I don't come from a dairy background. So ROM scoring is very much something that I've been exposed to through the last sort of 10 years. And I've done the training and run through all of that. And, whilst you think that your eye is incredibly accurate, as you've highlighted, you differ from person to person.
I'll confess straight away, last year when I had to redo my ROMs, because obviously you've got to redo it every year, there were 1 or 2 videos that I will swear blind was not the score that the committee has given them. Now, whether that's just because of the way I look at it, or whatever, and some you watch again and you go, okay, maybe they're right, but there's still 1 or 2 I went, no,
me too.
Completely disagree with your assessment. So again, it's showing the objectivity of between us and whatever. So, hopefully a system like this will be more objective. That's got to be a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think really it is one of those that when I first started working in this role, I worked with a couple of ROM scorers on a farm. And what we do is we do this sort of ground truthing exercise. So for some producers, we bring in ROM scorers. So obviously run the cows through under the camera of the morning milking. And that same morning, we'll then have those scorers independently score from one another, compare all of those scores. And we initially started doing that to sort of we were hoping to sort of reconcile our scores, the HerdVision scores against what was on farm. But the first exercise I did of that, the 3 scorers, the differential between their scores was, fascinating.
Was it?
So lameness prevalence, so 2s and 3s. The first scorer was at 3% of the herd. The second scorer was 17, and the third scorer was 26.
Oh wow!
So that's
even what we're saying. Even though the whole point is we do these 30 videos a year to accredit us, even then you're saying there was that's a big,
absolutely. And
big.
honestly, I spoke to all of the scorers afterwards, and it was incredibly ideal sort of setup, really very flat, concrete, quiet environment. And I thought, this has got the best potential of everybody agreeing. But it's just fascinating.
But then saying that, I know one of my clients, it'll go, afterwards you'll talk about what was there and they'll go, I was expecting you to pull that one up, Lame. I didn't say anything, but I said no, but it's what I saw of that animal in that moment. She walked past me, she looked fine, whereas that one that you haven't highlighted, I have, because she walked past me, she didn't look fine. So again, if a system like this is doing it more constantly, it's going to be more consistent again, isn't it?
Do you know what I've always identified in cattle is the fact that they're prey animals. So they have this ability to mask things. Now, obviously in this instance we're talking about lameness, but we have calves at home, and I've always found that somebody routinely, we check morning and evening, pneumonia in calves, it's like you don't get calf rearing without pneumonia. It just goes hand in hand. And I always find that if it's the same person checking, it's one thing. If you get somebody else in to do that morning or evening check, you can see something completely different. Two people can identify something completely different within the one calf if it is sick, but the one person who isn't the normal, so they're not used to that herd's person, whatever, they are incredibly good at masking that illness, whatever.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Because they're going, if you're a lion, don't eat me.
Yeah.
But well,
absolutely fine.
Funnily enough, we were talking about that earlier this morning when we were here, how, cows are prey animals and they will hide their lameness because they don't want the weakness to be shown.
Yep.
So there's one sure thing, if you're stood next to the race and they go through that every single day and there's no one there, then absolutely fine. All of a sudden you're stood there with a clipboard, she's going to go, oh, not sure about you. Actually, this 3 might just be a 2, maybe a 1 even. So it is really interesting. And I think my point is that there's space for everybody, right? There's a place for everyone within the dairy industry.
You have to have the practical and the theory. That's the whole point. Somebody has to get out there and make sure that.
Yeah, but it's going to do us out of a job one day, Neil. It's going to do us out of a job one day.
Well,
that's all right.
I can say that from the sort of set out of HerdVision, particularly on the mobility side, we worked with some of the sort of most reputable ROM scorers to build into
that's what you want.
Sort of knowledge into the algorithm. So we had this existing algorithm. We wanted to get that.
And it has to be continuously measured because things will change in it too.
Yeah, naturally.
So
hopefully because it's got better.
We've sort of gone off where we were, but that's fine. No, that's fine because that's what we're here for, isn't it? What was I going to say? Right, so it's mobility scores and condition scores.
Absolutely, yeah. So body condition score as well. So just to give you a sort of brief rundown as to how it works. The camera is positioned above a race, so it can be installed into
existing setups.
Yeah, existing races. That's the most important thing.
Does it need a certain length of race or? Yeah,
so you're looking at sort of 5 meters clear, sort of raceway, flat, sort of race floor, but it's installed about 2.
So you don't want a footbath in that 5 meters.
No,
not too narrow, I suppose.
Really, ideally not.
Because again, they're going to step over it differently, etc.
Absolutely, you just want a really flat race floor and then sort of 2 to 2.8 meters of
height.
Because it's like I say, sits above the race. So it's a really small. You're talking literally a sort of foot by foot kind of
shoebox basically.
Yeah, exactly above the raceway. That's where the camera lens sits. So you're actually looking at a 3D, a 2D, and an infrared camera that sits above the race.
I'll say it again: a 3D, a 2D, and an infrared camera.
Okay, exactly. Yeah, so that is how we work on both sides of it, but particularly the body condition score. So you're looking at skeletal structure and then fat cover as well. So, it's fairly technical bit of kit. There's it's called computing on the edge, but there's a fitlet within the sort of hardware, and what that means is that all the analysis is done there and then, and it's held within that fitlet. And then that pings to the cloud, and it's essentially available straight to your desktop or your phone. But if there's any sort of issues with power outages, it's quite common that we find that our biggest challenge tends to be that somebody doesn't know, although there's always a label on the plug to say HerdVision, do not unplug. Someone switches it off. It doesn't matter. That is still
what data's there is there.
Absolutely.
Does this data link in with anybody else? So I don't know, for argument's sake, where we are today, we're at the South West Dairy Development Centre. There's some Laley robots. Does it tie in with the Laley software? Does it tie in with, say, Dairy Plan? Or
so a big part of
Uniform?
What we're doing at the moment is sort of hosting and facilitating all of those conversations with those partners, with those kind of other existing, I suppose, data providers, and to be able to integrate all of that. So we're working with a couple of software providers at the moment. We're very, very close to having that integration. So we've got those APIs, because that's one of the big things. Is that a big part of my job is data handling at the moment, because of course, we haven't got that. I have to do a lot of data upload and download for each of our customers. But that's real priority.
So as it stands at the moment, they're getting it, I'm guessing, on an app then and there.
Absolutely.
But the plan is to integrate that into existing, whether it's Uniform or whatever it happens to be, so that the relevant data is there for them to combine in with everything else and
Absolutely.
make more of it.
And feeds into all of those other alerts within those other softwares.
Yep.
You know? So things, for example, like body condition score, putting that straight back up into uniform. We do
Yep.
a lot of that sort of manually at the moment. But that's a massive thing, because we all know what everybody's like within industry. Nobody wants to sort of talk to one another, and it's all very cagey, and it's all very...
To be honest with you, this is a repeat of a conversation we've already had today with one of our other guests today, basically saying along the same lines that there's just almost too much out there, and we all should be talking together a lot more for the benefit of the farm, the benefit of the cows.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely, because it's bigger picture stuff.
Yeah.
You know, whilst everybody, of course, is very commercially aware of their own data, it's moving industry forward, which should be our priority.
Yeah, definitely.
Because we tend to hold it very close to our chests, and then by the time it's time to release it, we don't know how to release it.
Absolutely.
Because we keep doing research. But anyway, that's how do you identify the cow? What?
So EID, yeah. So we've got an EID research.
Yeah. So is it yours, or can you tie in again like Cow Manager or Allflex, or is it existing ones, or have you got your own?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So whatever EIDs are in those cows, that's what we use.
Registered.
It's an agri-dem reader within our hardware.
So that's not big. So you said release commercially 2022. How have things gone the last 2 years, or where have things gone the last 2 years?
Yeah, I mean, it was only sort of earlier this year, 24, that we really expanded the team. So
I was going to say that a few people, I mean, you're the third person I've met in the last 6 months that have only probably been with HerdVision in that time. So there's obviously been a big scale up, as you say, just this year.
Yeah, definitely. So prior to then, it was an incredibly small team. You mentioned David earlier, a chap called Stuart.
That's what I said. That's right. David volunteered Stuart when I spoke to him in October. That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. So Stuart, I mean, he's done an amazing job, because he was on his own for 2 years on the sales side, and got an awful lot of units out, but the whole team were travelling the whole country.
Right.
So the whole team was 3 people, I think. So,
right.
Also going out to Ireland, over to Estonia. We've actually got a few units out across Europe. It was a lot of kind of resource required from very minimal staffing. This year expanded the team massively, and we've seen great uptake. And to be honest, I think for me, it's kind of the industry's perception of this tech has really increased, or the awareness of it. And it's just the nature of the scenario is that we have to get our sort of product out there and what we're doing, and the idea of it as well. It's kind of getting past that, that kind of sort of more old school sort of thought process around wanting to sort of hang back from such tech. But to be honest, just comparatively, I find it really interesting. Comparatively to when I came into the industry 10 years ago, it's changed massively. Just like say perceptions and
so how many units are there out there now?
To be honest, I'm not directly sort of within the commercial conversations, but I think we're over 100 in the UK now.
Okay.
But there's a lot actually happening kind of more globally. That's whereabouts we sit, which is really exciting. And I sit within a team of 3.
I was going to say, so what's your role then within the business?
So technically our team is the customer success, customer support side, which is a hugely important element, because I sort of foresee that there are a lot of farmers out there that may be sort of employing this sort of tech for a number of reasons. It may be that actually they've seen it and they think that is absolutely the right thing for my business for all the right reasons, but also, I'm not saying it's the wrong reason, but people may be so restricted in terms of staffing, labour, they might be throwing it in, and then sure enough, that if they're limited with time in other areas of the business, they may not actually be fully utilising and implementing that data and making decisions off the back of it.
Your role is basically to make sure that they've spent the money on a system, but that system works for them.
Absolutely.
Because otherwise they're going to sit there and go, well, that was a waste of money, and they're not going to recommend it or say to people, you should really do this. You want to make sure it happens.
And that is where any business's reputational risk really sits. It's sort of post sale. It's just because you've ticked that box to say, great,
I've sold one.
That farm. Actually, you need to support that customer. You need to support that farmer and ensure that not only the farmer, but a big part of my job is working sort of holistically across that farm business. So whether we're looking at the nutritionist, the consultant, the vet, the foot trimmer, the existing scorer, to bring everybody into that conversation and say, look, right, this is the data that we have available here in this format. How is it best? How can you best utilise that? And what do you want from this system? Because if we're in such a, we're very, very, sort of early days of the business, it's one of those that we need all of that feedback to be able to develop our sort of next steps, really.
So if my role being a nutritionist, if I was on a farm with HerdVision, can I access that data?
Absolutely.
Pretty much live?
Yeah, so you can access the same data as the farmer. The only difference is we'll give you a consultancy sort of level
pass or whatever.
And it just means you can't change anything. So when I say change anything, all that would be is sort of looking at your alerts and clearing those. That's obviously just for the farmer, but then you get exactly the same level of access.
You get the raw data. You just don't have the ability to manipulate.
You can download that. You can formulate your own reports, which is the most important thing, because sure enough, yourself and your farmer client probably want two different
aspects of it.
Information. So absolutely. And like I say, that's one of the big things for us is sort of ensuring that they're bringing in all of those different components of that business, because that is the way that they're going to find the most added value. Because it can be, a case of farmer that implements it, that buys it, puts it on farm. They're not actually the one that's using it day to day. It's the herdsman. Herdsman's like, oh yeah, I've seen that. What is it? A classic example, and that's just due to time limitations. That's out of no badness. That's out of no, I'm not going to tell you about what I've got here. It's just purely that everybody's under such time constraints. It's one of those that it's a massive challenge.
So you're obviously dealing, and what do you cover? South,
so that largely consists of sort of southwest Wales, and then sort of over to the cut off sort of middle of Dorset, and then all of the southwest. So
you're not going, I don't know, Hampshire across?
No, my colleague covers that side, and then through the Midlands. So we've done it on cow density, so looking at where we've got sort of our existing customers, but the potential for customers. Naturally enough, the chap that does sort of the southeast, he's not got the likelihood of having the same amount of customers as we have done in Devon and Cornwall. We know what it's like. So exactly. Dorset, there's plenty around.
So when we were here with Mike, he alluded or mentioned one of the things, and I know when I ran into James and Andy last, it was like, about that one. So what's from work that the business has done, what's being done here, what can you tell us? What figures have shown up that maybe surprised you or unexpectedly went, oh, that's affecting things in more ways than we were expecting?
So I think from sort of where the system has been on farm 2 years, we've had some really interesting scenarios crop up that I think it's one of those that often you sort of get a bit of a hunch for something, but it's always so interesting to be able to actually obtain that data. So there was 4 of our existing farms that we actually sort of pulled into a study.
Were these 4 of the original Arla ones, or were these just 4 farms?
No, just 4 selected farms from the existing client base. And they essentially fed into a study whereby it was pulling information to, I think, inform sort of the next steps and the next sort of area of progression for the business. And what that is it's fed into what we call our new sort of Herd Tasker version of the app. And what that's based on is fertility alerts. So it is mobility, but it's also fertility alerts. So looking at body condition score and mobility events within that cow's life that are going to essentially affect potential breeding decisions. So there are 3 different elements of the app and 3 different alerts, should I say, that farmer can look at, and it's, like I say, sort of a secondary sort of interface of the app that they are able to look at, and it's all sort of based on, it's just outcome led. So rather than it being another scenario of a huge great host of information, chucked on the farmer's desk. Because as we all know, there is so much information, there is so much data within dairying particularly, that just means that we need to be able to actually action it. So looking at those 3 different parameters, the first one is body condition score at calving. So what we looked at was that animal's absolute body condition score at calving.
So what you're doing it after first milking, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So she's coming back in, and what we identified was that cows that are calving in at a body condition score of less than 2.85.
Right.
So
we're talking a 1 to 5 score. I should just clarify that for anybody listening, because other parts of the world don't always use the 1 to 5.
Absolutely, dead right too.
I don't know if they still do, but when I was in Australia, they went away from 1 to 5. Everyone else was using and decided to go back to the old Australian way of 1 to 8. You tell me. But I know other parts of the world use 1 to 10, don't they? So if we're talking on a 1 to 5 scale, anything less than 2.85,
Yeah, so anything that was calving in at less than 2.85, the calving to conception interval for that animal was extended by 8 days. So under 2.85, their calving to conception interval was 103 days.
Okay, I'm going to take a step back. How are you? We talked about ROMs for mobility scoring. How are you? What's the word I'm looking for? How are you checking the condition scoring? Because, you normally talk about Holstein. We're obviously talking about Holstein here, I'm guessing as well. Holstein, you want them calving 2.5 to 3. Well, I might be able to go 2.5 or 2.75, but I'm never going to go 2.85. How are you doing it? And to be honest with you, I've almost got some people, I've said to people, and I'll say it now, you almost don't need 1 to 5, you just need too fat, too thin, and just right almost for a lot of people. They can't differentiate between 2.75 and a 3. You don't need almost 2, you just need to know that she's there or there. But so how are you then, mobility scoring, obviously you said, but how are you then checking the condition scoring? Have you got people condition scoring against the systems?
Absolutely. So similar scenario whereby we've absolutely, obviously, of course, got the algorithm and the sort of technical decisions made off the back of what is the sort of solid data and how the camera views it. But then we've also fed into that experts' opinions off of the back of the AHDV 1 to 5.
Yeah, and I should say I always carry one of them in my bag, and I always use one of them when I do cow signals training on the board to everybody. If anyone wants to know how to condition score or a way to follow it, AHDB have got a great sheet that breaks it down and follows it for you to be able to score your cows. And it's a great piece to the point that, say, I've always used one. I've taught people to condition score from it. And I always use them when I'm doing cow signals. It's on the clipboard for everybody when we walk around. So when they can condition score cows, they can follow that if they're not used to what they're doing. So yeah, that's a great tool for anybody that doesn't have HerdVision.
Absolutely, yeah, and it very much is that. It's a case of actually ensuring that you're able to monitor and you're able to measure.
Definitely.
Whilst automated is fantastic, the most important thing is actually having that data at your fingertips and whatever way that's obtained.
So again, basically what you're saying is, by knowing what a 2.75 and a 3 is, the computer's been able to work out, the AI, I'm assuming, has been able to work out that 2.85, so below 2.85 increases by 8 days, you said?
8 days, yeah. So those that are calving over 2.85.
Well, as you mentioned that, I've got it here, with the latest, as we record this, the latest King's Hay costs have come out, and as they currently are, for every extra calving interval day costs £4.88 a cow over 385 days. So
I was going to work off the back of £5.
Yeah, I was just about to say, if you say that's a 5 at 8 days, 5 8's are 40, so it's costing you 40 quid.
Yeah,
basically.
Exactly. And of course, as you've just highlighted, that is a sort of a level of accuracy that can't be isolated by the human eye.
I couldn't do that with my eye, say, she's 2.85. Definitely not.
Yeah.
Definitely not.
Yeah, so that's number one. Number two is the absolute BCS change, so body condition score change within the dry period.
Right.
So obviously we're looking to keep that very level.
Yeah, exactly. The ideal from my point of view is you should be drying them off at where you want them to calve, so at 2.5 to 3, and ideally you want to be maintaining that through to calving.
Absolutely. So for cows that lost, now it sounds very specific there again, but lost more than 0.14, So we're literally
0.14. So really not a lot at all.
Less than 20%.
Less than a quarter of a condition.
Of a condition score,
Yeah. Right. So again, can't pick that up by the human eye.
So you're looking at an extra 17 days in difference of calving to conception interval. So you've gone from a cow which has lost less than, so she's not changed massively, so she's lost less than 0.14.
Yeah.
Her calving to conception was 93.
Yeah.
Then you're looking at those that have lost equal to or more than, has gone up to 110 days. 17 days in the difference, and I find that incredibly fascinating because, like I said, that's so minor that it wouldn't even be picked up.
Well, I was going to say, I think that was the figure Mike quoted here, and I know when I saw Andy and James, I went, I'm told it's like 0.14 drop in condition score. Was it between calving and I think, I can't remember what it was sold. You'll have to say again what that figure was. That was during the dry period, wasn't it? That
dry period, exactly.
0.14.
Yeah.
So I think Mike had thought it was from calving to conception. I can't remember what it was, but it wasn't during the dry period. But anyway, 0.14. There's the decrease in fertility. Now, how long did you say it was again?
So you've gone from 93 days up to 110, so it's 17 days. 17
days extra by dropping 0.14 during the dry period.
If we work on our £5 per day open, it's £85 per head,
That's just...
And I think it just highlights the importance, as you rightly said, of maintaining that body condition score.
And again,
dry period.
We can't do that with the eye. 0.14 just isn't going to happen. Nobody's that good. Nobody. But okay, right. And then you said there's a third thing.
That's number 2. Yeah, so they're both obviously body condition focused, whereas the third one is mobility. So looking at lameness during early lactation. So you're looking at any cows which have presented a single lameness event or more, but just the one lameness event during early lactation.
So what are you calling that? 0 to 50 days or?
So just 0 to 60.
60 days.
Yep. So you're looking at a difference of 14 days
on conception.
Calving to conception. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you were to look at just the face value of days open, you've got a cost there, but also if you add in the cost of the lameness event, it becomes...
Which is, again, looking at the latest King's Hay figures, is £284 a case as an average.
There we go. So, I mean, you're coming out somewhere around sort of top end of 200, 300 quid, aren't you?
Yeah.
Those are the 3 alerts. And really, as I say, all of the sort of detail behind it sounds incredibly technical and really interesting to hear. But in terms of sort of
But those are 3 hard facts, really.
Exactly.
They are 3 hard facts from what you were saying, whereas 8 days, 17 days, or I can't remember how many days the last one was on the lameness.
Oh, we
17.
have 14, 8, and 17.
It just, it's mind-blowing that I suppose this is kind of stuff we've known, but actually we can prove it.
Exactly, yeah.
We've got a computer proving this information to us or showing it, and it's also picking up not 1/4 of a point condition losses, 0.14 of a condition loss.
And it's it's just such a drastic differential between the two. And for me, it's very much a case of, like I say, data's great and all that information, incredibly technical, fantastic. However, when you're on farm, for me, making a decision, stood in a pen, calves at home, I want something that I can act on. I don't want to have to look at all of that. So that is why we've done what we've done with the herd tasker side of things, is that you can actually look at that and it will bring up those cows. It will present to you that cow number, how many days she is in milk, and what alerts are associated with her, that you can then make decisions on farm off the back of that. Are you going to extend a voluntary wait period? Are you going to look at the semen you're putting on her? Whatever it may be, those decisions that are made with your vet, then it's able to be...
Well, as I say, I'm straight away thinking, I know they talk about the Holstein wants to be 2.5 to 3, but a condition score at dry off, I'm sat there thinking, it wants to be 3. doesn't it?
Because that's across a number of different breeds as well. That study was done.
True,
So.
but if I'm saying she wants to be 3, well, 1, she's over that 2.85. If she loses 0.14 from 3, she's still just over 2.85, and it's sort of going, maybe we need to be sort of saying they need to be a 3 rather than a 2.5 to 3 from that information.
And it's one of those that you would never know that without the
No,
data.
no.
So yeah, that's I've found that to be, when I'm doing my job, going out on farm, looking at the data, the dashboard's amazing because it's got so much information there, all presented right in front of you. But actually, then when you show my customer, that side of the app, it is very engaging because it just means that there's that's the fertility side. The mobility side is literally it brings you up your list of cows that are presented as a 2 or a 3 in the last 7 days. So essentially you can flip your phone around, or you give your trimmer the consultancy login, and they can act on that, as they've got the cows in the crush. And it's one of those that, there again, whilst absolutely it's a mobility identification tool, it's not to say there's always going to be something wrong in the foot. I always highlight that it's a case of you are literally looking at the whole cow. It could be something outside of the
it could be a stifle or whatever it has to be.
Exactly. Yeah. So.
But you just said that's a crossbreeds. Have you noticed anything, what's differentiation between breeds? Because usually, for example, you'd expect a crossbred cow to be probably, or a Frisian cow to be probably half a condition score. Your expectation is for them to be half a condition score higher. So if you're talking about a 2.5 to 3 for a Holstein, you always talk about a Frisian, you should be 3 to 3.5. And I'd say probably the same with a crossbred, or certainly a more sort of pro-cross bred cow. Those sorts of cows, you normally expect them to be carry more cover on them.
Absolutely, and it was interesting for me. I've got a customer in Wales that has a Jersey herd, and it was my first time I'd seen the camera on sort of all Jersey herd, and just sort of understanding to watch the camera over the week, because it takes 7 days to learn the cows. Once the camera's installed, we internally watch the dashboard and see what's happening. It was interesting for me to watch and see what was sort of being isolated, because I thought, I wonder quite how it will learn those sort of slightly smaller, slightly more round cows. But exactly that came out sort of, I think, average condition score of sort of 3.1, 3.2. Whereas, you look at your average Holstein herd, it'd be slightly below that. But it's, I just find that incredible that, it can tell that it's a smaller cow, and it's,
You hadn't told it was a Jersey at all.
It just literally learns. And it's of course you have to, like the race on farm and things will be, not that we've done anything, but farmers set things up slightly differently. Your cubicles will be a slightly different size, but the camera just isolates that. So really interesting.
So I was actually sort of just listening to it. One thing that sort of comes to my mind is that at the end of the year, you, I presume, can go back and look at your trends throughout the year then.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, I mean, we were speaking this morning, individual cow tension is absolutely vital. But I was just sort of sitting here thinking that by the end of the year, I can actually determine to myself where my problems were throughout that year.
Yeah, absolutely.
That to me is actually going to be an easier way to actually utilize it than anything else. Because if my mobility is changing in certain months, or going up in certain months, or going down in certain months, gives me a bit of a pattern.
Absolutely. And there again, I always say, when I'm sat with a customer looking at the data, the most important thing about that information, particularly around body condition score, mobility is similar, but looking at BCS, the important side of this is the trend. It's looking at what's happening. You can go back, so you look over sort of 365 days, and you've got a marker where she's calved, and it's so interesting to look at what's happened in that time, and then be able to act off the back of that. It's all literally right there. Like as you say, it's two things for me: is you're working on a preventative approach rather than curative. That's something that's been a massive part of everything I've always done. There's no point in being on the back foot, pardon the pun, but also that trend analysis is incredibly important in any production cycle.
And post calving, it's just a question coming to mind, how long are you seeing for cows to get back in positive I guess, energy to get back in
Cognition.
to start to see positive condition back on?
Completely varies, as you can imagine, herd to herd. You can look at some farms that I find it fascinating that sometimes you're looking at a trend, and over 365 days you've got a farm there whereas cows are hardly dropping, and you see such a minute change between sort of dry period into post calving. But then others, we've got across the spectrum, we've got many different systems, and you can see sort of more sort of, I say, extreme ends, but people that are struggling and really wanting to act on that and utilise that to be able to actually change what they're doing.
So I was going to say, before this sort of information is now obviously available, you'd sort of almost industry talk about, the cow should be back in positive energy by 50 days. And you see a lot that aren't. And on the flip side, I know I've looked at it. If you know how to look at your milk recording, you can look at it. I've had herds of mine back in positive energy be about 35 days, which is fantastic for me as far as I'm concerned. The fact that I've got those cows back in positive energy 35 days, bang. But this must highlight that on some herds, and that's what you were implying, that some are not back in positive energy as quickly as they should be.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think one of the big things is that so many farmers are often saying to me, can you benchmark us? Can I see where I lie comparatively to your other farms? That's something that we're working on, because that is always such a huge driver for any farmer, being able to see where they are
relative to
anonymised. Absolutely. Because I think that just really kind of pushes things forwards. And as I say, it's very much a case of this system is out on such a range of farms, range of systems, range of different management types. And it's really kind of a bonus for us, is that you can really see sort of what's happening across the platform. Because just to look at the UK dairy industry, it's incredible what we do. I always think we've got such a vast range of different systems, different farms. Whilst we grow an incredible amount of grass here, not all cows grazed, to be able to produce what we do from the different systems we run is amazing. But at the same time, I always think whilst we're an incredibly efficient, sustainable nation for milk production, we need to ensure that we maintain at the top of, whilst we're looking at an incredibly smaller carbon footprint comparatively to the rest of the world. We need to be acting on that. We need to not just sort of sit pretty and say, this is great. We actually need to do something about that. And that's essentially what all of this is about, in terms of, it's really kind of maintaining and just driving that sustainability angle as well is a massive part of that preventative approach, I suppose.
Now the hard question has to be, how much is this going to cost me? Or a client?
So it's largely based on a subscription basis. So previously, I'm sure there'll be some people that have listened to this and they'll go, that's not the way it worked. But previously there was a case whereby farmers would buy the hardware. And then they pay a subscription. Whereas now it's largely done on a flat rate subscription basis. So you're paying a price per cow per year. You're looking at me because I know that you're going to want a price.
So I'm guessing that's based on not milking cows, that's whole herd size.
Well, it's cows that are going to be going under the camera.
But for argument's sake, if I've got 300 cow herd calving all year round, am I paying for 250 average, or am I paying for 300?
You're paying for your average. Yeah, absolutely. You're paying for your average.
So you pay for what's going, your average going through the parlour?
Absolutely.
Not the whole herd?
Yeah, you're not looking at your young stock.
But I'm talking about your dry stock as well.
Yes, So what I was going to say is that some farmers are putting their dry cows underneath. Which is great, because actually that's the most important time. It's so difficult because
to monitor
naturally, they're not the cows that are going to be going through the race on the back of the parlour. But as you say, it's an average of cows in your herd through the year. So your dry cows are going.
And that was going to be my next question. What's the cost?
So you're basically going to be looking at anywhere between about £6 and £10 per cow per year subscription.
So 50 to 80p a cow a month. Thereabouts. And is there any upfront cost for installing the hardware or anything like that?
No. So all on that subscription model works on literally just the price of the cow per year. So
Per year.
the first invoice would be received at point of, once cameras in, once we know everything's working, we're obviously going to pay at that stage.
And then I guess on that case, then if you're doing that, I'm assuming you must be thinking there's other things to come. Are you allowed to tell us about potentially further developments?
Absolutely. So I mean, it's one of those that, to be honest, the beauty of the tech that's already on farms is that it has the ability to kind of do so many more things than we're doing at the moment. We want to get what we're doing now absolutely and categorically right. And that, that's not a simple process. With any startup, there's always teething problems. But sort of looking forward, it's one of those that with that 3D camera, there's so much potential. We've talked a lot around things like rumen fill, because that's something that is obviously of huge interest. So it's, to be honest, there's a number of different things. I don't work per se in the kind of R&D development side, but one of the really exciting things, less dairy, I appreciate that now, but still cattle focused, is that from my interest side, we are looking at the beef camera. So
makes sense.
That's going to be within sort of
looking at covers and grades and stuff.
Couple of years, exactly. So your sort of your carcass grade. Moreover than that, which I think is going to be transformational for industry, certainly transformational for Dad and my brother back at home, is live weighing. So you're looking at a scenario whereby you've got a camera above a water point, most commonly. So you've got it on a couple of farms at the moment. Calf comes in, literally, it's just drinks, leaves, produces your live weight. And at the moment,
so not actually having to physically go over scales, it's looking
not touching any sort of weigh cell at all. It's literally just off of that sort of bird's it can 3D pick up the dimensions and go based on it should be 320 kilos. That's what it is. Yeah, absolutely. So at the moment, like I say,
growth rate.
Only trialing it, but we're working within 5% of the ground truth weigh cell weight, which is really exciting.
Definitely.
Because when you talk about 5% on, say, a finished beast at 800 kilos, whatever it may be, you're not a massive. I say a massive way out. Why I'm saying that is because we'll weigh cattle at home. We'll put a calf over the scale, and Dad will go, get that bloody thing back here. I don't think that's that weight. Puts it back in. Sure enough, the thing comes up with a different weight. You know what the weigh cells are like. So that's a really exciting kind of cross-sectoral element. And like I say, that'll be a huge game changer to be able to actually kind of take out that stress period. And I think that's a massive thing about all of this sort of automated technology, whatever it may be, whether it's HerdVision or whether it's any of these other systems.
Do you think it could work on something like sheep and pigs as well then?
There's absolutely no reason why not, because it's essentially isolating an object and taking away from that. And of course, there's different algorithms that go into that.
And so you'd have to do that first, get the averages so you can measure it off.
Exactly. So
there could be some fascinating stuff coming out here, couldn't it?
That's really interesting.
Yeah. Well, I'm sort of taking a look at the time now and thinking, we need to sort of be drawing this to a close. As always, a lot of fun and a lot of learning.
Interesting stuff.
But any last wise words of wisdom?
No, nothing that no one's heard before. Just that I'm, like I say, incredibly passionate about what we do in this industry and the fact that we do it quite so well. We were talking earlier, just a conversation before we started recording, about welfare. I don't know if anyone's come across the World Animal Welfare Protection Index, but we actually rank the highest. So there is one grade.
When we say we talk in the UK here.
The UK, So as the UK, we rank the highest. I say that there is one rank above what we rank, but no one's achieved it in the whole world. No one's achieved it. So us, along with some Nordic countries, we have ranked what's called a B. And that, like I say, is the highest ranking. And I think that's really representative of what we do and what we do well. And everything around all this tech is all about cow welfare, cow comfort, and ensuring that those girls in that yard are happy and they are content producing what they produce for us.
And I was going to say, following on that conversation, you're right, Neil, as an industry, because you made that comment, we are not great at celebrating that in the way we should. We should celebrate more that we as an industry here in the UK are great.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say it's perfect because there are unfortunately some exceptions. Usually there are reasons behind that.
Yeah.
And that doesn't make it excusable. But overall as an industry, we do a great job.
Yeah, buy local.
We should be celebrating that.
We should be telling people that we're so high up on the list when we say buy local.
Yeah.
Because buying local doesn't necessarily mean the same thing
No.
to the
I've got to be honest, I
supermarkets.
hadn't heard of that ranking either.
No, I sort of heard about the ranking of the sustainability and stuff.
On the carbon and that we're about the most efficient, aren't we? I mean, I got brought up the Youngstock conference yesterday. Yeah. Any last thoughts from yourself?
No, very good. Yeah, it's excellent. It's really interesting to hear about it. So. Lovely to hear about new technology. I always love listening to that. So.
Definitely, and being able to put those 3 figures that you gave us, actually in the last couple of years that HerdVision have found from putting it out there.
Scary stuff.
Oh, it is, isn't it? And as you say, it soon adds up. And the fact that it's such small changes are making a difference, whereas we cannot detect that ourselves, kind of proves that this technology makes a difference, doesn't it? And it's already proving that it can potentially make that difference.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's all just about building resilience into our businesses.
Yeah.
It is.
These farming businesses that are just so incredibly imperative to keep this.
But other than that, I'd like to say thank you, Gabby, for coming and talking to us. But otherwise, I guess it's a goodbye from me.
And from me.
And from me. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Chewing the Cud podcast, a podcast for the UK dairy industry brought to you from the southwest of England and listened to around the world. And now for the really boring bit, I'm afraid, the legal disclaimer. The information provided during this podcast has been prepared for general information purposes only and does not constitute advice. The information must not be relied upon for any purpose and no representation or warranty is given to its accuracy, completeness or otherwise. Any reference to other organisations, businesses or products during the podcast are not endorsements or recommendations of Chewing the Cud Limited. The views of Andrew Jones are personal and may not be the views of Chewing the Cud Limited, and the views of Neil Gregor are personal and may not be the views of Game Changer Farming and any affiliated companies. For more information on the podcast and details of services offered by Chewing the Cud Limited, visit www.chewingthecud.com. Thank you and goodbye.